Alright, so as promised, I'm going to give my testimony and share it with everyone who wants to hear my testimony. So, to summarize, testimony is your story of how you've come to God. Alright. Okay, so as I was growing up, I knew who God and Jesus were, but my family was all Catholic, and that was as far as my relationship with God and Jesus ever went. I knew that I was supposed to pray to God when times were tough, but that's the half of it, right? So when my parents were fighting, I would be in my room under a blanket crying, blaming myself that they were fighting. And so when they divorced, I just, like most kids, blamed myself that they had gotten to a point that they had divorced and couldn't be together anymore. So I didn't really have a relationship with my dad until I got older, and so I kind of resented him for that, and I don't know, like, I wanted a relationship with my dad, but I just felt like he didn't want one with me or my brother, so I kind of held him to that. So in the midst of my parents' divorce, I was in kindergarten at a Catholic school, and maybe a couple months into my kindergarten year, I had been molested by a boy in the class, and my parents had come to the school and brought it to their attention, like what had happened, and were trying to get this boy taken out of the school, and they said that they can't remove a student from the school. So I ended up leaving the school and going to public school, and like most kids in kindergarten, we were playing house out on the playground, and I didn't really know that it wasn't right to, when you were playing house, I was the dad, my friend was the mom, and, just playing, I kissed her, and she went and told a teacher that I had kissed her, so I'd gotten in trouble, but that was really as far as that it ever went. So between elementary and middle school, I was teased really bad to the point that it was where teachers were laughing along with the kids during class while I was being made fun of. So I was teased for not only being chunky, but for the clothes that I could not wear. And that made me even more depressed that teachers were in on all of that. So, in between middle school and high school, going into freshman year, a girl had invited me up to her house one weekend to come hang out, and we were watching movies one night, and American Pie was on, and there was a scene where two girls were kissing. And she had told me that she wanted to try it, so I just went with it. And at that point, it just escalated to a point that I had no idea what was going to happen. So the next morning I was leaving to go home, and when I had gotten home, my cousin, who was my best friend at the time, I had told her like what had happened, and she started crying and wouldn't talk to me for a while, and that even made me feel worse, that I was, I felt gross. I didn't know. So, going into high school, I used that as my advantage because boys loved to hear that. They wanted to hear that, and they wanted to watch that. And it made me friends. So I used that to my advantage to make friends. So, sophomore year, in math class, I had met this girl who I didn't have feelings like that for anybody else. And so at that point, we started dating. And we dated for like 5 years. So through this time, people were telling me like, she's cheating on you, she's talking to other people, and, you know, yada, yada, yada. And I just got to a point that I was just so beyond depressed. Like, even the person that I was dating, it didn't feel like wanted to be with me. So one night, my mom and my cousin had started like a Bible study group, and my cousin decided that she was going to say that she had tried to commit suicide. And at that point I was like, I'm gay. And my mom at that point started crying and took me home, and she was crying the whole way home, and I just didn't understand, how could you not accept me? And so when we got home, she told me that I was going to hell. And at that point, I had ended up breaking up with my girlfriend and tried to be with guys. I started dating boys who seemed like they were interested. One boy invited me over only at night to hang out. And being naive and not knowing any better, he invited me over one night, and it ended up to a point that I was raped. And so after that point, I had gotten to a point where even someone who could do that to me didn't want to be with me, and so it even made me feel worse about myself. And so I had ended up getting back together with my girlfriend. I started partying. She was into that, and so I wanted to experience and do those things that all these kids my age were doing, so I started drinking. I resented pot. My family, I'd seen what it had done to them, and I didn't want that. Out of anger one night, I was fighting with my girlfriend, and my friends had offered to smoke pot, and so being angry and dumb and making irrational decisions, I decided that I was going to smoke with them. And so smoking led to me trying pills, and I loved the feeling of that, so I kept doing it. And like, it just continued. Me and my girlfriend were always fighting about the stupidest, like, most dumb things that, you know, most high school, you know, relationships do, couples or whatever. So during one of the nights that we were fighting, I felt so low that I was laying in the bathtub, holding my breath under the water, just trying to think of why I was staying. Why was I staying on Earth? What was the point? I wasn't happy. I didn't want to be alive. And I just felt so unwanted by everyone. But something in my head kept telling me, like, just wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow will be better. So I'd gotten out of the bath, went to bed, and the next morning I woke up and I was like, okay, the daytime's always better usually for depression. At least it was for me. And so partying turned into my obsession with raves. And I had always obsessed with doing the drugs that made you happy, and ecstasy and Molly seemed to be that. So I started with Molly, and Molly soon became my new drug of choice, and I was doing it every weekend. So during all of that, I was smoking with my girlfriend, and of course we had the munchies, and we had went into the kitchen to get snacks, and I remember feeling like this overwhelming feeling all the way from like my toes to my head, like this sickness that I could not, like, it just wouldn't go away. And next thing I knew, I was waking up on the floor, and my girlfriend, her mom, and her brother were all like, are you okay? Like, what just happened? And I was like, why am I on the floor? And they were like, okay, you passed out, and we really don't understand what just happened. So the next morning I told my mom, and she'd rushed me to the ER, of course, being the worried mom that she is. And MRIs, tests, nothing came back with anything, so I just continued on with my life. Drinking, smoking, Molly, pills, you name it. Until September 21st, 2013. I'd gotten a phone call from my dad that I didn't know at the time was going to be the worst phone call of my entire life. My dad had asked me, he's like, I need you to sit down because what I'm about to tell you, you're not going to handle it very well. And so I was kind of like, okay. And he was like, Ash, your sister was in a car accident. And I was like, okay, are you at the hospital? Do I need to go to the hospital? Like, I didn't know what was going on. And he was like, Ash, it was a fatal car accident. Like, she had a tree and she's not with us anymore. So at that point, I was just kind of like, okay, was Aiden in the car? Her 6-month-old son. And he was like, no, he's good. He's at home. And so at that point, I was just kind of getting the reality that my sister wasn't here anymore. So I told him that I had called him back. I needed to call my mom. She wasn't at home. She was out of town for the weekend. I needed to tell her, like, I needed to call her. So he was like, okay, call me back. Let me know what's going on. And I was like, okay, whatever, bye. And dropping to the floor and just bawling my eyes out, I had called my mom, and I was, like, just screaming and, like, crying. And she was like, okay, well, I'm going to try and find a way home. Like, I'll be home in a few hours. So I ran upstairs, collapsed on my brother, and was like, Alexis is dead, she's gone, bawling my eyes out. And my brother was just like, what's going on? So we ended up getting ready. We went out to my sister's house. I had called my cousins and Hysteric and my best friend to come over to my house. I didn't know what was going on. And when we got out to my sister's house, me and my sister's sister were trying to, like, be detectives and figure out a way that she wasn't gone. It wasn't reality. We didn't believe it. Like, she was still here. Like, that's not real. And so after the funeral, I had gotten to a spot that I had just zoned myself out, that I wasn't here anymore, and I really was not home. I was drinking and smoking heavily and driving under the influence of all those things. Doing ecstasy and driving and just being relentless. I think that's the word. I just didn't care. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and everyone told me that they were there, but no one was really there when it came down to when I really needed people the most. And so I had gotten a pound of weed, and I decided I was going to make edibles and sell them and make money. I knew people that did it, that wanted them, that couldn't find them, and I was like, it's an easy thing. So before going to bed one night, I had tried one of my edibles, and I was laying in bed next to my cousin, and I just remember looking up because I was like, okay, something's watching me. Something's there. Someone's messing with me. And when I looked up, it was just a dark figure. Like, it was creepy. Like, I didn't have a face. And so I woke my cousin up. I was crying. I was like, okay, I'm freaking out. I'm tripping. Like, And, I didn't take any drugs to be like this. So after that point, I decided that I was not going to smoke ever again, that I didn't want to have a high like that ever in my life. So since that point on, I haven't. So it's been like a year and a half that I've been clean of smoking pot. And so without having pot as a alternative to drinking, I was drinking heavily. And I had gotten to a point that I was really depressed. And I was so done. I had no one. My girlfriend left. It felt like everyone left. I didn't have anyone to really, it felt like, to reach out to. So I was getting up to go get in my car. I was going to go drive and kill myself. I was so done. And so at that point, I was getting up and I was like, look, God, I can't do this anymore. I can't. So unless you're going to take this away, I'm going to end it right now. And I'm over it. And at that very moment, like, I can't explain it to you. The feeling of, like, all my burdens and heaviness were lifted off of me. And I just felt happy. I was crying happy tears. Like, I was bawling before, and then I was bawling because I was happy. And so, for the next 2 weeks, I was trying to figure out, like, I need to tell everyone. Like, God, like, I'm saved. Like, I'm a saved person. Like, this is so exciting. I can't even explain to you, like, how spiritually high I was. And everyone was annoyed listening to me because I just couldn't stop talking. I was like, oh gosh, God's amazing. Like, God's so good. Like, he saved me. So during that time, I was trying to figure out, like, am I really gay? Like, it's something I've struggled with since I was, in kindergarten. And it just got to a point that it wasn't a struggle for me anymore. Like, I didn't want to be with girls anymore. And he lifted that off of me. I knew God was working in me because I was still drinking and driving and all of that stupid stuff. And my 21st came, and the next day after my 21st, I just knew, like, I didn't want to do that anymore. Like, I was ready to stop and put those things in the past. Like, I'm done. And so, during all this time period, we have a Bible study group. I'm sure you've all seen my posts, and I'm sure I've asked most of you to come. During one of our Bible studies, I had gotten a major panic attack, and I hadn't had a major panic attack in a long time. And so it was very strange. So at the end of Bible study, I gave people rides home. And one in particular, I had to drive out to Independence, which, if you know, my sister died on the way to Independence on Vita Springs Road. So I was waiting out in the car for the people to come, and I had to wait for like 30 minutes, so I got really, really frustrated. So I was like, screw this, like, I'm going to get gas. So as I'm driving, my Bible was sitting in my passenger seat, and I just remember being so angry. I wanted to rip all the pages out of my Bible. I wanted to rip them out and throw them out the window. Done. I was bawling. The thoughts were like screaming in my head, like, when you drive out to Independence, you're driving home and you're killing yourself. You're going to drive into the tree that your sister died on. Like, you're going to kill yourself tonight. And I was so angry. I was beyond livid. And so after I got gas, I went home, back to Bible study. And then I had to wait another 20 minutes, and the people weren't coming out, so it made me even more angry. And before, when I wanted to kill myself, I had listened to Red Hot Chili Peppers because I had a really strange, like, obsession with them. And so I went on a walk and I was listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I was walking in the neighborhood and I just caught like a glimpse of someone like walking behind me, so I like turned around and I was like, who's following me? And it was no one. It was like, I don't know if you've seen them before, but it was legit a shadow person, just a black shadow behind me. Like, and at that point I was so scared, I like turned around and I was like, okay, I need to listen to Christian music and I need to walk back home. And so I put on my Christian music, I walked back, and I was just bawling because I was like, why is this happening? So I had taken everyone in Salem home, and I was taking the person that lived out in Independence home. And after I dropped them off, I had called my mom, and I was just like, look, I was going to kill myself, and I want you to know, like, I'm not going to. I just want you to know, like, I'm on my way home, but I wanted to let you know in case for some reason I didn't make it home. And so she started freaking out, of course, but I made it home, and my mom's like, that was like a spiritual attack. And so at that point, she was explaining to me, like, that's how you know you're saved. Like, that's when the devil knows you're a threat, because you've been saved and you're on the right track, and he's trying to do everything in his power to get you to fall off track. And so at that point I was like, okay. And so every day is a new daily battle. You wake up and you have to want God's will. You want to have that relationship with God. You want to keep building it. You have to want it. And so those thoughts don't just go away just because you're saved. It doesn't become a perfect walk when you accept God. It has to be something that you are 100% sure this is what you want, because God's going to work in your life. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have trials and errors. Like, it doesn't mean you're not going to ever fail or fall, or that everyone's going to like you, because most people don't like me, and that's okay. But that's really my story. That's my testimony, and that's God being so amazing in my life. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me and ask. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.